Hello everybody, today I'm going to be doing a comparison of all these thrower flashlights. This is largely unplanned. I've just got a few topics that I have listed down, but I'm going to go off the top of my head in terms of what I think of these flashlights, and I'll also go through and show you some beam shots of all of these lights combined together so you can decide which one's best for you. They're quite different, but at the same time they all achieve the same thing in terms of throwing a beam fairly far. Some of them have a little bit more battery life, some of them produce a more narrow beam, some of them produce more flood. So it really just depends on what you need. So what's included? So all these lights here, if you go to the left, essentially you've got the Convoy L8. So this is the largest light, produces about 5,000 lumens. You've got the Nextorch T20L and Nextorch L10 Max. These use a different type of technology called LEP technology. So it's basically laser excited phosphor, where we have a laser that interacts with the phosphor material to produce a beam. We've also got two TIR flashlights here. So TIR stands for total internal reflection. So we've got a special lens in there, as you can see. It's like an acrylic lens and a bit of protective glass on the top there that helps to prevent that from being scratched. And then you've got this one here, which is the FC-12. With all these flashlights, I got a USB cable included for each one of them, and also the battery. They come with different batteries, which I'll talk about later. And I love flashlights that have USB charging. It just allows you to use them on the fly. If you've got a flat battery or something, you can plug it into your battery charger or your power bank, your car, that kind of thing. And it's just so much more convenient than having to take out the battery, charge it, and put it back in again. So I think this is one of the most convenient ways in terms of, if you've got a torch that you want that's easy to use and you're a beginner, definitely these ones are great. Even if you're not a beginner, I think that the technology is now kind of going towards that direction anyway, where there's a bit more of the internal charging for all of these flashlights. In fact, some people just buy the L8 so that it charges the battery. It uses a special large battery in there. A bit about the construction. If you can see, with all these flashlights, they have fantastic construction. It's very difficult to fault them. But if I'm to choose the ones that stand out to me the most, I'd say it's the Nextorch flashlights here. The anodizing is just a step above the other ones. It's so smooth. It's very durable as well. I find that when I've had it in my bag and sort of knocking against all the other flashlights. Some of the others do get a little chip here and there, but I've not had any issues with these ones at all. And the quality of the finish just feels really amazing. So I'd say in terms of the anodizing and the milling of the flashlights, these just a little bit further ahead than the others. They are also the most expensive out of these bunch of flashlights as well. Next up, I would say, would be the Speras M4 and the Convoy L8. They have this sort of matte black finish. The M4 has a slightly more, a little bit of a sheen to it, but the Convoy L8 has more of a matte black finish to it. Both fantastic build quality and chip resistant, quite chip resistant as well. When I sort of have these flashlights in my bag, I can't find any chips or marks on these lights at all, but I have found them on some of the others. So I'd say those two are very closely following up with the finishes on the Nextorch L10 Max. In terms of the milling as well, really great quality with the milling, especially with the L8. Look at that. It's just really impressive in terms of the surface area they've managed to achieve there with, with a large LED like with the SBT 90.2. You're going to need a lot of surface area to dissipate that heat. Here you've got the Speras M4, and sometimes you will find that with these flashlights, if you look into the grooves and stuff, you can see some inconsistencies with the milling, but there's not a single flaw here that I can find. The Wurkkos FC-12 here has a slightly different finish. It's anodized, and I'm really quite surprised because it looks like it would scratch off pretty easily, but surprisingly, it's quite a tough anodization. It's very shiny and similar to the Sofirn IF22A as well. It's a little bit more shiny, but I have found that in comparison to the other flashlights, that these do chip a bit more in terms of the finish, the anodization. Doesn't affect the actual performance of the flashlight itself, But you know, things like taking off on and off the friction ring, you know, that sometimes scratches away a bit of the anodization. And you know, bits and pieces like tiny little imperfections that I would barely even notice anyway. You can just see here a bit of it's come off the knurling. But again, I don't really baby my lights. I just have them in my bag when I go out and take beam shots or just use them. So I think they all stand up fairly well for everyday use. Now, in terms of being able to actually take these apart, this is important for some people if you're looking to modify the flashlights yourself. Now, I know the IF22A, some people are actually able to get into the head of theirs, but I've not been able to get into mine. It might be, you might have to, you know, heat it up and then wrench it or something like that if you really want to get into that. There might be some thread lock in there. I'm not also able to get into the FC-12. Okay, or any of these LEP flashlights here. So they're completely sealed up, and that's a common thing with LEP flashlights because I think there's just a risk as well of the laser hurting your eyes if you mess around inside, and probably this is more fragile. So these ones I can't get into. However, these two on the sides I'm able to. So if you look at the Speras, the top does unscrew. You can take out that reflector and check out the LED if you want, or if you know looking for a mod and to change that up, remove the LED and put another one in. That's definitely possible. Here you've got the Convoy L8. Again, you're able to unscrew the head very, very easily, and Convoy is known for this, especially for DIY sort of people, or people that are just looking for a way to mod their flashlights. Convoy make it very easy to disassemble, get in, change things up if you want to. So just for your knowledge. Now let's have a look at the LEDs for each of these lights. So the Convoy L8 has the most, probably the most powerful LED I'd say in general compared to the other flashlights. It's got a SBT 90.2, and this LED is capable of producing 5,000 plus lumens. So the camera's not really focusing too well, but you can see it right there at the bottom. Square die, and it's fairly small die considering how many lumens that it produces. And because of the size of the die, this casts quite a strong and nice looking round beam considering the amount of lumens this thing pumps out. So this is the brightest one, produces a lot of flood, but it also throws a good distance as well. I think the stats is about 1,000 plus meters that this light actually throws. Glass lens here in the front that protects everything inside, which is fantastic. The bezel is this kind of slightly cut out version, simplified, and yeah, just a screw-on bezel like that. You can also see, because there's little cutouts at the bottom if the light's on, bits of light will leak out, so you can tell whether it's on and off. That can be useful if you put the light facing down like that. Coming up next is the Nextorch T20L. This is an LEP flashlight, and it has a shine through module. And let me see if I can get the camera to focus in. It's very hard to see, but you can see the little die at the bottom, which is difficult to see here, but it's yellow round sort of die. And how these work is that you've got the laser directly behind the phosphor, and it shines, passes that laser beam through there and converts it into white light. So these shine through modules produce a much nicer beam than the other modules which produce from a reflected laser beam. The lens, as you can see, is a glass convex lens. Okay, on the inside it's sealed, and we've got on top a nice bit of glass. And I really like that because some LEPs don't actually include that. I think a lot of them just have the the convex lens sticking out there, and often they're made of some type of acrylic, so you know, it leaves them open to being scratched and damaged and stuff like that. So I think that, you know, for a flagship LEP like this, it's really good that it has more protection. Bezel, nice stainless steel, simple bezel, and I quite like that finish on it. The reflector, again, no reflector, it's just a convex lens. So we've got a similar sort of design here for the Nextorch L10 Max, but there is no protective glass on front of this lens here. It's a convex lens, much smaller, as you can see, than the T20L, but it produces and throws a beam about half the distance, or probably more than half the distance of that one. So it's very impressive considering the size of it. And the bezel, pretty simple. It's just a black bezel that screws in there. You can't get into that, as I mentioned before. So here we've got, of course, the Sofirn IF22A, and quite similar to the Speras M4, except it's almost twice as long. So we're talking about total internal reflection lens. So these are often quite large in diameter compared to throwers that have like a smaller smooth reflector like that, but they tend to produce, in my opinion, a much nicer, more smooth beam, and they actually throw a bit further as well compared to something like that. Okay, I've not seen one of these made on a larger scale, like a TIR lens, perhaps that big. It would be quite interesting to see, and I wonder why they don't have any like that. But they all come in pretty much this size. I think it's about 4 centimeters in diameter. The LED in this one is an SFT40. It's basically a variant of the SST40, and it produces more lumens, better throw. However, it only comes in 6500K, so yeah, something to keep in mind if you're looking for a flashlight that's a bit warmer or something. This is, yeah, it is pretty sort of blue, has a bit of a bluish tint to it, so keep that in mind. There is a nice glass protector on it, as I mentioned before. The bezel here, simplified sort of bezel. There is a bit of kind of grip pattern knurling on it. Not that you're going to need it anyway because you can't open it up. Speras M4, very, very similar. I'd say the head is just slightly shorter than the IF22A. So if you have them right next to each other, you see what I mean? There's like a bit more, the module sort of comes down almost more than twice the distance. So they've managed to compress it in a bit further with the M4, but still get similar throw to what you get with the IF22A. I like that you can unscrew it and take it apart, and also that the bezel just lines up perfectly with the button. That little attention to detail is so important. You do see some companies, they'll just maybe not get that right, and the logo is a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right, and look, it's more of a little bug thing rather than it being important. But I like that they kept that in mind, so that the thread finished right on that point. Again, this is a TIR lens, and it has the glass on the front as well, and this really makes a difference. I do have another TIR lens flashlight that doesn't have that glass on it. I bought it many years ago, and it's just scratched up and pretty much unusable now, so really important to have something like that on there. In terms of the size comparisons, you can already see pretty much from the start of the video how large some of these are. We've got the Convoy L8. I'll just grab my ruler out so you can have a quick look. The L8 is close to 19 and a bit centimeters. Okay, so it's the largest flashlight. And you've got the T20L about 18.5 centimeters, 15.5 centimeters for the Nextorch L10 Max. So it just gets smaller from there. And I do find, now, if you're looking for a flashlight that you can carry around with you, you're probably looking at here onwards, so the L10 Max onwards, because what you're going to find is the head of these flashlights is just too bulky to be putting in your pocket. There's no way you're going to fit this one in your pocket as well. The L8 is just gigantic compared to the rest. But funny enough, I do tend to pick something like these designs because they fit in your pocket a little bit better, even because I find that the heads of these just going to jut out a little bit. It's fine, you can get away with it, but if you're walking around, say, in some jeans pockets, it's more noticeable, certainly. It's a little bit more uncomfortable. Even with the shorter size, with the M4 and the IF22A, I tend to choose the FC-12. That's the one I actually carry around with me a fair bit, actually, because it's just easier and it doesn't feel too obvious in your pocket. These two will fit into a hoodie pocket or a jacket pocket. This one more so than that one. This one probably more suited for your backpack or something like that. But I wouldn't recommend this one to put in your pocket. The good thing about this is the T20 has a clip, so you can clip that onto your belt if you want to. And the IF22A and also the Wurkkos FC-12, they also have a little clip. So that sometimes what I do is that I just clip it on the inside of my pocket and have the flashlight head face down, and just yeah, keeps it there for easy access. But with the Convoy L8, you've got 4 modes on here, 4 brightness modes. So you, basically low, medium, second medium, and then high or turbo. And you access them basically by turning the flashlight on and then holding that button. You can also double tap to access turbo straight away. The cool thing about this light is that it also allows you to check the capacity of the battery. I think you press that button 4 times, if I remember correctly, and it will blink out the voltage. So if it's say 4 volts, 4.1 volts, it will flash 4 times and then pause and then flash another time, so 4.1 volts. It's also got a tactical function as well. So I think if you press that 5 times, allows you to access that tactical function. So basically press and hold to turn the flashlight on and off. Turbo. And another thing is that you can lock the flashlight both mechanically and through pressing that button. I think it's 10 times, but yeah, you have to have a look at it. But it is possible to lock it out in 2 ways. Quite easy to use. Probably the only thing that bugs me with this flashlight is that it remembers the last mode. So if I have this thing in turbo, turn it off, and I'm not careful, if I turn it on again, I'm gonna potentially hurt myself. So I'm always very, very careful when I turn on this flashlight. I cover the front, turn it on, or when I turn it off, I make sure that the last mode selected is low so that I'm just not blinding myself when I turn that flashlight on. That's probably the only improvement I wish this light had. In terms of the Nextorch T20L, this has a tactical switch. This is technically a tactical flashlight, and you can see here on the back there, you hold that button down to access turbo mode from the back, but when you turn that flashlight completely on, you can then change it, cycle through to medium, low, and then strobe, and then back to high again. But if you're pressing and holding that button straight from the back, it's essentially just going to be turbo. And not only that, you can access a strobe mode by double pressing that tactical switch on the back as well. So yeah, pretty easy to use. This one here, the LEP Nextorch L10 Max, press and hold that button down, and that's how you actually turn it on. There's no way to turn on the flashlight just by pressing it quickly. And this is something I've gotten used to, but it did bug me a little bit in the beginning, just holding down and the button on and off to turn the flashlight, to activate and deactivate the flashlight. But I do find it to be quite useful. It simplifies things so that you don't have all these other modes to try to lock out the flashlight. Which I do mention as well, this flashlight can be locked out if you unscrew the back. There's no activation there with that E-switch to try to lock it out. Yeah, but as I said, the L10 Max doesn't require that in my opinion, because you have that press and hold function. It's got a very sturdy button as well, so it's not going to be accidentally pressed in your pocket. Can also mechanically lock that flashlight out by unscrewing the back. Now with the Sofirn IF22A, there's a few different modes on here to access turbo. Basically just double tap and you can get straight to turbo. But the good thing with the IF22A is that you're actually able to ramp by holding the button, or you're able to step ramp as well. So there's a setting in here. I can't remember what it is, but you can switch between stepped and ramp mode as well. I tend to just have mine on the ramp mode. It's just a personal preference. There is a way to lock the flashlight out as well. I think you press that button down 5 times while the flashlight is on, and it locks it. And of course, you can unscrew the tail cap. Oh, another thing to mention, it does have a moonlight mode. So moonlight mode's really useful. I find with the larger flashlights, I don't see them manufacturers including that option in them, especially with the LEPs, because people don't use LEPs for just going around the house or general lighting situations. But for a light like this, this is an SFT 40 emitter, produces 2000 lumens. To be able to ramp that down to like 1 lumen is so important. I think if you're using it at night, don't want to stuff up your night vision. So with the modes on the Speras M4, you have 5 different modes. You've got moonlight mode, which I'm a big fan of, as I mentioned before. And then you can go through, press and hold that button down. It goes from low, medium, high, and then double tap from any other mode to access turbo. Very simple to use. And there's also a lockout mode. I find that quite helpful. This light has the tendency to get activated in my pocket or when it's in my bag with other flashlights. It's just very sensitive, this button here. It's a great button. very responsive, but because it does stick out a little bit from the body, and you know, the IF22 does as well, but there's a bit more, I don't know how to put it, there's a bit more pressure required to actually activate it. This one just turns on quite quickly, so I find that the easiest way to just make sure it doesn't turn on is that I just unscrew the back one turn like that, and that mechanically locks out the flashlight. Now with the Wurkkos FC-12, in order to access basically any of the modes, you need to press that button fully down. Now the back button, if you press it halfway, it remembers the last mode that you were in. So if you basically turn it on and you can cycle, you can press and hold to make that flash, to make that light go from low all the way up to the highest mode. And then it will sort of flash when it's right at the top. Turn that light off there and then hold it down, it accesses that turbo mode. Access that turbo. But if you turn it on, say if I ramp it all the way down to like here, turn off the flashlight, it just remembers that that setting. So something to keep in mind. You can't change modes just using the back switch. You have to turn the switch on and then basically ramp it up and down. There's also step ramping. You can change that in the settings as well. I think there's also a strobe mode on here, but I've just not used it. I'm just telling you mainly about the modes that I use. The fact that I don't remember the other ones probably mean that they're not hugely common, but yeah, quite simple, quite easy to use once you have it all set up. You also have a mechanical lock function, just to unscrew the tail cap slightly, and you won't be able to turn that light on. But yeah, I've never had this thing activate in my pocket. Tactical flashlights with the switch on the back, almost impossible to activate that thing in your pocket, because the switch is just basically, nothing's going to happen. So even if this switch is touched in your pocket, nothing happens, because it actually needs to be on at the back first. So in terms of batteries, let's go through some of the batteries. Now, this is the what's included in the Convoy L8. It's the largest battery. It has a 26800 cell, and this one's included in the flashlight. These all have the batteries included with them, which is really handy, especially if you've got a battery like this, which is fairly uncommon. This is a 6800 milliamp hour battery, and I tell you what, it performs really well. I think it has a maximum draw capacity of about 30 amps, so it performs fantastically for just a one cell flashlight like this, especially with that SPT 90.2. It requires a lot of juice and a lot of amps, so this is a great battery, and probably the biggest one as well that I have. Now, if we go and have a look here at the Nextorch T20L, you've got a Nextorch 21700 cell battery, pretty much the same one that's included with the Nextorch L10 Max as well. And you've got IF22A, there's same thing here, 21700 cell in there. This one here has another cell, the 18350 cell. So yeah, in order to get that small body size, obviously you need to make sacrifices there. And so this one has 1100 milliamp hours, so definitely not going to last as long as these other cells. It's basically half the size of an 18650, but with almost less capacity. I think it's a bit smaller than half. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, you can see there, tiny little battery, but it certainly packs a punch. But with the smaller cell, you're not getting the run time as you will with these larger cells on larger capacities, especially if you're running the flashlight on the lower modes as well. The FC-12 comes with a Wurkkos battery. However, I swapped in a Sofirn battery in there. For some reason, the Sofirn battery just produces more lumens, significantly more lumens. So I've been using that, but it does come with the cell already. The larger the cell, the larger the capacity, generally speaking. Okay, all things being equal. So you can see here, 18650 cell. It's got 3000 milliamp hours in it, 4800 milliamps for the 21700 cell, and then you've got the QB 26800 cell. 6,800 milliamp hours. I mean, really impressive. That's more than double the capacity of 2 of those. Again, you're not going to be running all these flashlights on turbo anyway, so you might run it for a little second here or there. The M4, I think, lasts something like, I can't remember, maybe 45 hours on the moonlight mode, and I think over 10 hours on the low mode. So, pretty decent performance. You have to check out my other review. I haven't got the exact stats for it, but yeah, it does run for really long time on the lower modes. But if you're using any of the higher modes, it's going to drain these batteries just as quickly. It doesn't matter which flashlight you're using. So got the batteries all back in there. Again, like I mentioned at the start of the video, they all feature USB-C charging, and I just plug it into one of the PowerPoint chargers that I have, and works completely fine. Some of them take a few hours to charge, so just be patient. But I find that it's just so convenient having that USB charger and not having to rely on external charger. I do have an external charger and only got that a few months ago. So nowadays, to make things more efficient, I just take all the batteries out and chuck them in. But when you're traveling, sometimes you don't have the time to be able to have all that stuff with you. So great to know you can plug it into a power bank as well and charge your flashlight. This one, funny enough, the Sofirn F-12A also can charge your devices. So if your phone battery is flat, it can reverse charge, which is a great little bonus. In terms of performance, the total output of all these flashlights vary quite significantly. Now you've got this one here, the Convoy L8, that produces 5,000 or so lumens. I mean, that's really significant. When I take this one out and compare them to any of these other flashlights, it's apparent that this one is just the brightest. It produces so much light, so much flood, throws so far. It's just it packs the biggest kick for basically compared to all these other flashlights, hands down. But it doesn't throw the furthest. So in terms of the one that throws the furthest, the Nextorch T20L easily can throw over 2.2 or so kilometers. And what I've found as well is that if you have a building that's even 3 kilometers away and like a white building, you're actually able to see it quite well, even with this flashlight, which is this LEP, which is rated at 2 or so kilometers. So really pretty amazing. You've got these two again. This is the this LEP here, the Nextorch T20L, produces the most lumens out of any consumer available LEP that you can get. Now, there is another dual head LEP, but if we're talking about one single lens LEPs, this is the only one that produces 900 lumens. So it's pretty bright for a single lens LEP flashlight. They usually come around 400, 300, 400, 500 lumens. So the this one here, the L10 Max, produces about 400 lumens. Okay, so another thing to consider with these as well, do you need some flood? Because these don't produce any flood. See what's on the ground, where you're walking, very, very difficult. You can have a hard time with these unless you get like a diffuser or something on there. This is more for spotting, so if you're using them for hunting, or if you're using them for spotting animals, or just as a spotlight, spot beam for seeing something far away for pretty, the easiest way without having to carry around a gigantic flashlight with you. These are really good to go. Because they don't produce any flood as well, it doesn't disturb the neighbors or disturb people around you. It basically only illuminates the particular thing that you want in the beam. So that's what you use these for. With these two here, the IF-22A produces about 2,000 lumens. I've actually performed a couple of procedures here. I've done a spring bypass, which increases the current flow in the lumen output. I've also put a high drain battery in here as well with low internal resistance. The Speras M4 produces about 1,300 lumens. It's got a proprietary LED in there. I'm not sure what it is. And I think they call it like the Yinding 5050. That's what I've read. I'm not sure exactly what that is, but I know it's not a common one that you find on the market. Interesting thing about it though is that it has a round die, which a lot of LEDs, they've got a square die. So when I compare the beam of these two, I actually find this one to be much more pleasing to look at. It's smoother. It's also warmer than this one. Again, like I was saying, this has got the SFT40 that produces that really bluish tint, 6500K tint. This one is a little bit more, I think around 5,000. I have done a review of this so you can check and verify that. But they both have a decent amount of spill, considering that most of the light is focused in the center. Clean sort of light. I find that they're almost like a more subdued version of these two lights here with flood. So you find when you're using the LEPs, you get a really intense hotspot that travels for kilometers and kilometers, but that's all you get. This one, you get a nice hotspot that is fairly intense, but it doesn't travel as far. However, you've got a lot of flood, so you can use it on walks. You can use it for more everyday tasks as well, whereas these are more specialized flashlights. So that's our general performance with those ones. Again, there are some like low moonlight modes on these two flashlights, so the other ones don't have that. They've got low modes, so they will extend out the battery significantly on these three, but these really, if you want to draw out every little second out of this flashlight, you're going to get a lot more runtime out of these if you're using those moonlight or the low modes. Now, the FC-12 total output of this flashlight, similar to this one here, the IF-22A. So, it has that same SFT40 emitter, but the difference is that you've got it in one of these smooth reflectors. It's quite a deep reflector as well. And I was so surprised when I first got this to see actually how far this thing could throw for a little flashlight like this with a tiny little reflector. Really amazing. It doesn't throw as far as the IF-22A. I think it only throws for like 300 and something meters. I say only, but that's because I've got all these other ones to compare with. But if you haven't had a dedicated thrower before, this one will really amaze you. When I got it, I was blown away compared to all my other more floodier lights, the SST40 lights, SST20 lights as well. Amazing throw, but it produces also a decent amount of flood. Now, one thing I find with reflectors, they do produce a ringy sort of beam, so they're not as pleasing to look at as these like TIR lens flashlights. However, I think they do come in a really nice small package like this. And, with every single flashlight you buy, there's always a trade-off. This one might be a little bit shorter, but it's going to have less battery capacity, and the head's going to have to be bigger so that it throws further. Or even if it had a small head and a reflector, it probably wouldn't last as long as well. You've got larger flashlights. Larger flashlights, generally speaking, are going to throw further. And that's changing with LEPs because you can now have such a small thrower, in this little flashlight, almost the same size as my IF-22A, but you can carry that in your pocket, throws for 1.5 kilometers. Really amazing. This thing was not available even about 5 or 10 years ago when I first started collecting flashlights. So again, I think they're still in development, and there's I've seen a few models come out where they combine a few other LED modules on there, or maybe they have like a focusable LEP, but this is the main configuration they come in. I think they're great fun to play around with. In terms of my recommendations, you really got to think about what you want, and I've given you a lot of information already. You probably have a better idea of which flashlight you want. Again, if you want just a monster flashlight, throws really far, produces a strong throw beam, a heap of light, and a lot of flood, Convoy L8. And price-wise, it's only about $100 and something Australian dollars, and that's a fair bit of money, especially if you're just starting out collecting flashlights. But for that kind of money, you get just so many lumens and the same specs as well as more expensive flashlights. And the quality of this L8, just amazing. It comes with the battery, that 26800 battery as well. So you really can't go wrong with something like this. I'd really recommend it if you're looking just for a strong thrower, a large, strong thrower. That is great bang for buck here. So that reflector's gigantic. Look at that. So if you're looking for something that has that sort of strong pencil beam, that lightsaber like effect, and in terms of like general fun factor, get yourself an LEP. I always thought to myself before I had these that they were just pointless. I couldn't see why I'd use it. But you won't believe how fun these are to use. I find myself just opening up my window, shining out my window. I don't know. There's just something really fun about these as well. And you can use them, funny enough, you can use them with binoculars, and you can see how far that beam throws and see what they're illuminating from kilometers away. So if you're actually using this to spot from a distance, I don't know, maybe you live out in the country and you've got animals and stuff like that you want to scare off your property, these work really well because the intensity of light that comes off it. And I found this out by accident. Bring this out to a park at night, and I'd shine it, and all birds would just jump out of fly out of the trees, and animals scurrying away. So you get the same effect also with the IF-22A and the M4, just very strong, intense throw beams, but with just a bit more flood. So you really could interchange these if you're looking for more practical use with extra flood. I'd recommend those. These are also quite expensive, so you're looking at a few $100 US for the T20L, and same case here, I think 150 US for the L10 Max. So they're not cheap, and they're the most expensive out of these flashlights, but again, they throw the furthest. They're small considering how far they throw as well. These ones here, especially the IF-22A and the FC-12, these are your best bang for buck flashlights. They produce 2,000 plus lumens, so that's almost about half as much as the L8. So they produce they're even brighter than these LEP flashlights, which are 400 and 900 lumens, right? But again, 2,000 plus lumens, you get extraordinary throw. They come with the cell in them as well. And I think that the Sofirn sells for about 50 to 60 Australian dollars online. Wurkkos, I've seen that for almost half the price, like for me $40 or something like that. And great construction quality. So many great reviews out there on these lights. I think just for bang for buck, you're starting out and you just want something that works and isn't going to break the bank. Get one of these. Get them both. If you can, they're excellent. The M4 is more just a specialized version of the IF-22A, and I know Sofirn have created a new one. I think it's the IF-19, Sofirn IF-19, half the size. I think it takes a 18350 cell, similar to basically the same cell as the M4. So something you might want to go and check out as well. The M4 though, I haven't seen the IF-19 in the flesh, but the construction on this light is just amazing. Top-notch machining, but you also get this really smooth, matte kind of finish on there, flawless. So I really like the beam, as I mentioned before. It just has a smoother beam compared to the IF-22A because of the LED. It has that round profile. Don't know what they've done, but it just looks nicer, in my opinion, than the IF-22. So I hope this information was useful for you, and I'm going to go straight to the beam shots. If you have questions, let me know below. And if you like the video, make sure you click the like button, because that just helps me get my videos out to more people. And if you want to see more videos, make sure you subscribe.
T20L. The L10 Max now. together. Next to the Convoy L8. Convoy produces a lot of lumens, but it's not as concentrated in the hotspot. And the L8 next to the T20L. Sofirn IF-22A turbo. Still hitting that Ferris wheel, but mainly the reflective material. It's hard to see. Tower might be a bit too far for it. It's more of a wider beam. Speras M4. IF-22A next to it. They're quite similar. Can't spot too much difference between the amount of throw. Right down the end of these train tracks. This is the Speras M4. turbo. I-22A, Sofirn. Nextorch L10 Max. Nextorch T20L. It's the only one that manages to hit that bridge or whatever on the far end. Wurkkos FC-12. T20L. L10 Max. L10 Max. I-22. I-22A. Speras M4. Speras M4. Convoy L8. Wurkkos FC-12. Nextorch L10 Max. Nextorch T20L. Speras M4. Sofirn IF-22A. Convoy L8. FC-12. L10 Max. T20L. Speras M4. Sofirn IF-22A. Convoy L8. L10 Max. T20L. L10 Max. L10 Max versus T20L. I-22A. Speras M4. Convoy L8.